The ZSS Whisper drifted through the silent void of the Oort cloud, its obsidian black hull absorbing starlight like a predator in shadow. Inside the sleek reconnaissance vessel, 3 Zapirian scouts monitored their instruments with practiced efficiency. Bioluminescent veins pulsed beneath their chitinous armor, casting eerie blue-green light across the dim cockpit. Scout Vrix adjusted the long-range scanners with one of his 4 clawed hands, his mandibles clicking in amusement. "Another dead system," he muttered, his voice a rasp of vibrating plates. "The Vorac Overmind will be displeased. We need fresh biomass." Scout Krell leaned over the display, his compound eyes reflecting the flickering data streams. "Patience. The galaxy is vast. There are always more prey species." The 3rd scout, Yix, remained silent, her antennae twitching as she fine-tuned the ship's stealth systems. The Whisper was nearly undetectable, its emissions dampened, its heat signature masked. No primitive species should have been able to spot them. Then the scanners pinged. Vrix's claws froze mid-motion. A blue-green world appeared on the display, its continents outlined in soft light. "There," he hissed. "3rd planet from the local star, organic signatures, industrial emissions." Krell's mandibles spread in a predatory grin. "Prey CL, no energy shields, no fleet signatures." He tapped a command, and the ship's systems filtered through the planet's radio transmissions, crude, chaotic bursts of noise. Human voices, music, the endless chatter of a species that didn't yet understand the dangers of the void. Yix finally spoke, her voice a whisper of grinding chitin. They broadcast their location like children shouting in the dark. Vrix laughed, a series of rapid clicks. "The Vorac will feast on this world. Their biomass will fuel the swarm for cycles." He activated the long-range comm, preparing to transmit the coordinates back to the Vorac fleet. "Mark it for harvest." Krell leaned back, crossing 2 of his arms. "Look at them. No defenses, no awareness, just noise." His voice dripped with disdain. "They don't even know we're here." Ix's antennae twitched again. Something nagged at her instincts. Their transmissions are erratic. Some patterns repeat, but others. She trailed off, unable to articulate the unease coiling in her thorax. Vrix dismissed her with a wave. "Irrelevant. Their technology is primitive. Their weapons, pitiful chemical explosives. Their ships," he snorted. "They haven't even left their own moon in generations." Krell chuckled. "The Overmind will crack this world like an egg." Yix said nothing. She watched the planet on the screen, its blue oceans shimmering under the distant sun. There was something about the way the humans broadcasted. Not just noise, but layers of it, as if beneath the chaos there was order, a pattern hidden in plain sight. But she kept silent. The others wouldn't listen. Vrix finished inputting the coordinates, his claws moving with swift precision. Transmission sent. The swarm will be here within 3 rotations. He leaned back, satisfied. Another easy conquest. Outside the Whisper, the void remained still. The Oort cloud's icy debris floated undisturbed. None of the scouts noticed the faint glint of metal hidden among the asteroids. None of them saw the human stealth drones watching back. The ZSS Whisper drifted through the void, its obsidian hull drinking in the starlight. Inside, Scout Vrix adjusted his sensory array, mandibles twitching with amusement, as another burst of primitive human radio chatter crackled through the speakers. "Still nothing but noise," he said, turning to Scout Krell. "No quantum signatures, no warp trails, just electromagnetic screams into the dark." Krell's bioluminescent veins pulsed a lazy violet, the Zapirian equivalent of a smirk. "The Vorac will enjoy this one. Soft flesh, no orbital defenses, a quick harvest." Scout 3rd Jix, the youngest of the trio, leaned over the console. "Should we scan deeper? Their planetary networks might—" Vrix cut him off with a sharp click of his mandibles. "Waste of time. Look at their pathetic satellites. They haven't even colonized their own moon. A warning chime echoed through the cabin. Krell's veins flashed red. Power fluctuation. The lights died. The hum of the engines stuttered into silence. Jix's claws scrambled across the now dark console. Backup systems aren't responding. The whisper shuddered. Something thumped against the hull, then another and another. Rix whirled toward the viewport, just as the stars outside warped, reality itself bending as angular black shapes materialized around them. No engines, no heat signatures, just jagged, knife-edged silhouettes blotting out the stars. Cloaked vessels, Jix whispered, his voice trembling. But their tech is supposed to be primitive. Krell's claws dug into the console. Open a channel to the swarm now. Static hissed in reply. The whisper lurched violently as something clamped onto its hull with a metallic screech. The scouts stumbled, their exoskeletons clacking against the deck. Alarms blared, or tried to. The sound cut in and out, like something was eating their systems. Then the boarding hatch exploded inward. White hot metal sprayed across the cabin as the door tore free. 3 figures stepped through the smoke, their armored boots crushing the debris underfoot. Black carapace plating. No visible joints, just smooth, predatory angles and visors that reflected the Zapirians' own stunned faces back at them. The lead human lifted his rifle, the barrel humming with a charge that made the air taste like ozone. His voice came through the helmet's external speakers, cold and precise. On your knees, Vrix hissed, raising his foreclaws. You dare. The human didn't move, didn't flinch. But the rifle snapped up, and a pulse of blue energy cracked past Vrix's head, searing a hole through the bulkhead behind him. The smell of molten metal filled the cabin. I won't ask twice. Jix dropped first, his bioluminescence flickering panic. Blue Krell followed, his pride warring with the instinct to survive. Vrix remained standing, his chitinous plates rattling with rage. You think this changes anything? The Vorac Swarm is coming. Your world is... The human's free hand moved. A blade snapped out from his forearm plating, its edge shimmering with monomolecular sharpness. He pressed it against Vrix's throat, just hard enough to dent the chitin. Let me make this simple, the human said. Your ship is dead. Your comms are dead. And in about 6 minutes, every data packet you ever sent is going to lead the Vorac right into a trap. He tilted his head, and the visor retracted, revealing cold blue eyes. My name is Captain Ryan Blake, and you just made the worst mistake of your lives. Behind him, the other 2 humans moved through the cabin, their gauntlets spitting thin tendrils of nanite wire that slithered into the Whisper's systems. Screens flickered, data streams rewriting themselves in real time. Krell's voice was barely a whisper. You let us find you. Blake didn't smile, but something in his eyes made Jix's veins pulse ice. White, welcome to Earth's neighborhood, Blake said. Now sit tight. The show is about to start. Outside, the void itself seemed to twist, and the first human warships decloaked. Not just the angular drones, but massive cruisers. Their railgun batteries spinning up with a low, hungry whine. The Whisper's sensors, what few still functioned, painted the nightmare unfolding around them. A fleet, a real fleet, and it had been waiting for them the whole time. The dim glow of the interrogation room's single overhead light cast long shadows across the Zapirians' chitinous faces. Scout Vrix flexed his mandibles against the restraints, his bioluminescent veins pulsing erratically with what humans would call fear. The other 2 scouts, Krell and Jix, remained unnaturally still in their chairs, their compound eyes tracking every movement in the sterile white chamber. Captain Ryan Blake stood with his arms crossed beside interrogator Lisa Hayes, whose fingers danced across a holographic display. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage of 5th century Earth mushroom clouds blossoming over deserts, cities reduced to rubble. You recognize this? Hayes asked, pausing the playback on a particularly devastating firestorm. Vrix's antennae twitched. Primitive fission weapons. Our ancestors outgrew such toys millennia ago. Hayes smirked. She tapped another command, and the display shifted to more recent images, swarms of drones darkening skies, hypersonic missiles striking targets with pinpoint accuracy, orbital platforms unleashing kinetic rods that cracked continents. Krell's forelimbs rattled against his restraints. This is impossible. Your species only achieved spaceflight 6 of your generations ago. Blake stepped forward, his boots echoing in the small room. That is what we wanted you to think. The captain leaned down until his visor reflected the stunned faces of all 3 scouts. You ever play poker, Vrix? The lead scout's mandibles clicked in confusion. It is a human game, Blake continued, where you hide your strength until the right moment. He straightened, nodding to Hayes. The interrogator brought up a new feed, dozens of hidden shipyards buried in asteroids, massive dry docks concealed behind Jupiter's storms, entire fleets of warships lurking in the gravitational shadows of Neptune. Jix let out a chittering whine. You've been building this entire time, since before your great-great-grandparents hatched, Hayes said. She zoomed in on a particularly massive dreadnought under construction. The US and Atlantica. She is just one of 12 in her class. And you led your friends right to her doorstep. Vrix's antennae drooped. But your radio signals, your primitive broadcasts. Bait, Blake cut in. We've been leaking outdated tech specs for 50 years. Let the galaxy think we're still throwing rocks at each other. He tapped his temple. While we've been watching, learning, waiting. Hayes brought up one final image, a star map with hundreds of red dots scattered across human space. Know what these are. The scouts remained silent. Vorac scout ships, Hayes said. Just like yours. We've tracked every single one that entered our territory. Let them all report back the same lie, that Earth was weak, defenseless. She leaned in close. And now your entire swarm fleet is jumping straight into our kill zone. Krell suddenly thrashed against his restraints, his bioluminescence flaring bright red. You'll die. The Vorac have consumed 1,000 worlds. Your pitiful tricks won't. A new voice crackled over the room's speakers. Captain Blake, we've got multiple warp signatures incoming. It is them. Blake didn't even glance at the scouts as he turned for the door. Tell me, Vrix, in your culture, what do you call it when prey turns out to be the predator? The Zapirian scout had no answer. Hayes followed Blake out, pausing at the threshold. Enjoy the show, boys. Humanity's been waiting a long time to introduce ourselves properly. The door hissed shut behind her, leaving the 3 aliens alone with the live feed, now displaying hundreds, no thousands of Vorac bioships emerging from warp at the edge of the solar system. The scouts watched in horrified silence as the human fleet, previously hidden across the system, began powering up weapons they'd never revealed to the galaxy. Somewhere in the depths of the USN Defiance, alarms began to sound. Not warnings, not distress signals, a call to war. The silence of the command deck was deafening. Admiral Jake Morrison stood before the holographic display, his hands clasped behind his back as the tactical map flickered with incoming data. The Zapirian scouts had been interrogated, their ship stripped for intel, and now the real test was coming. Contacts, Lieutenant Chen announced, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. Multiple warp signatures at the edge of the system. They're here. Morrison didn't flinch. Show me. The display zoomed out, revealing the outer reaches of the Sol system. At first, it was just a ripple. Distortions in space-time, like heat haze over a desert. Then, one by one, they emerged, Vorac warships, their bulbous, organic hulls glistening under the distant light of the sun. They moved like a swarm, their formations fluid, their numbers impossible to count at a glance. God Almighty, muttered Commander Hale beside him. There has got to be 1,000 of them. Morrison exhaled slowly. More. The Vorac fleet advanced, their hive, mind broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was simple, a single pulse of thought transmitted in perfect, chilling clarity, surrender or burn. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Some swallowed hard. Others tightened their grips on their consoles. But no one spoke, no one panicked. They had trained for this. Morrison turned to his comms officer. No response. Let them wander. Across the system, human stations and outposts went dark. Lunar defense platforms powered down. Mars colony cut its transmission. Even the civilian chatter from Earth's networks faded into silence. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. Aboard the Vorac flagship, the Overmind pulsed with irritation. Its tendrils writhed within the command pod. Its consciousness spread across the fleet. Where are their ships? It demanded, its voice echoing through the neural links of its sub-commanders. Scout drones probed ahead, scanning the empty space between Pluto and Neptune. Nothing. No fleets. No orbital defenses. Just the quiet hum of a system that should have been scrambling in terror. They hide, hissed one of the Vorac sub-minds. They know they cannot fight. The Overmind wasn't convinced. Something was wrong. Then the anomalies began. Admiral, Chen said, her fingers flying over her console. We're getting flickers on deep-range scans. Something's out there. Morrison allowed himself a small, grim smile. Right on schedule. Near Neptune, space rippled. Then again near Uranus. Then a dozen more points across the system. Tiny distortions, barely noticeable. Unless you knew exactly where to look. The Vorac drones detected them too. Their sensors screamed warnings, but it was too late. The first railgun round tore through a Vorac bioship before its crew even registered the attack. The projectile, moving at a fraction of light speed, punched clean through the organic hull and kept going, leaving a gaping hole venting atmosphere and core. Then the second hit and the third. Chaos erupted across the Vorac fleet. Ships veered wildly, their formations breaking as they scrambled to identify the threat. Where is it coming from? The Overmind roared. The answer came in a storm of fire from behind asteroids, from the shadows of gas giants, from the dark side of moons. Human ships decloaked all at once. Not just a few. Not just a token defense force. Thousands. The USN Atlantica led the charge, its massive railgun arrays spinning up with a deep, resonant hum. Fighters launched in swarms, their engines flaring as they streaked toward the disoriented Vorac. Morrison leaned forward, his voice calm but carrying the weight of inevitability. Open fleet-wide comms. The channel crackled to life, broadcasting to every human ship in the system. All vessels, Morrison said. This is Admiral Jake Morrison, weapons free, engage at will. The battle for Sol had begun. On the bridge of the Atlantica, Captain Elias Vance watched as the tactical display lit up with enemy contacts. His gunnery officer turned to him, grinning. Orders, sir. Vance didn't hesitate. Pound them to dust. The railguns fired. The Vorac fleet burned. And for the first time in their long predatory history, the Vorac Overmind felt something unfamiliar. The silence stretched across the solar system like a held breath. The Vorac fleet hung motionless near Pluto, their organic hulls pulsing with anticipation. Their hive mind churned with confusion. Where were the human defenses? Where was the panic? Scans showed nothing but empty space between them and Earth. Then space rippled. Near Mars, the void shimmered like heat haze. The first human warships tore through their cloaking fields, angular and brutal, their railgun batteries already spinning up. The USN Vanguard led the charge, its prow bristling with missile pods. More distortions flickered across the system, from behind the moon, from hidden bases in the asteroid belt, from Lagrange points where no ship should have been able to hide human vessels, emerged by the hundreds. Then the thousands, the Vorac Overmind recoiled. Its sensory tendrils flared in disbelief. This wasn't a fledgling species. This was a predator that had been waiting in the dark. All ships, weapons free. Admiral Jake Morrison's voice crackled across the human fleet. On the bridge of the USN Atlantica, his fingers tightened around the armrests of his command chair. The dreadnought's main screen lit up with targeting data. Focus fire on their command nodes. Let's see how they like being the ones outgunned. The first railgun salvo tore through the Vorac formation. Tungsten slugs the size of freight cars punched clean through bioships, sending geysers of ichor spiraling into the void. The Overmind shrieked across the psychic plane, its pain reverberating through every ship in its fleet. "Sir, their flagship is adjusting course." Lieutenant Chen called out from the tactical station. "They're trying to retreat." Morrison smirked. "Too late for that." He tapped a command into his console. "All fighter wings engage. Keep them busy while the big guns reload." From the belly of the Atlantica, swarms of human fighters launched. The Raptor-class interceptors streaked toward the chaos, their pilots whooping over the comms. "Fox 3, Fox 3. Pilot Diaz laughed as her missiles locked on. A Vorac cruiser exploded in a ball of green fire. "Damn, these guys fold fast. Thought they came here for a fight." On the ZSS Whisper, now impounded aboard the USN Defiance, the captured Zapirian scouts watched the battle unfold on a viewscreen. Scout Vrick's mandibles trembled. They lured the Vorac here. Interrogator Hayes leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Yep, took 50 years of pretending to be harmless, letting every scout ship that slipped through report back about how weak we were." She grinned. "Turns out, patience is one hell of a weapon." Out in the black, the Vorac fleet was coming apart. Human destroyers carved through their formations, their point defense lasers slicing apart boarding pods before they could launch. The Overmind's psychic screams grew frantic, then desperate. Then the Atlantica's main cannon fired. The spinal, mounted mass driver sent a projectile at face straight through the Vorac flagship's heart. The organic vessel burst like overripe fruit, its remains scattering across the void. Morrison watched the explosion reflected in his officer's wide eyes. That's one less hive mind in the galaxy. He keyed the fleet-wide channel again. "All vessels advance. Clean up the stragglers. I want this system sterile by the hour." Pilot Diaz banked hard, her fighter skimming the wreckage of a Vorac carrier. "Hey, Command, you seeing this? Some of these guys are trying to surrender." A pause, then Morrison's voice cold and final. "They shouldn't have come here." The Zapirians flinched as the last transmission from the Vorac Overmind shrieked across the comms, a wordless burst of terror before it was silenced forever. Hayes pushed off the wall and headed for the door. "You boys, sit tight. Once this is over, well, talk about where you fit into our new diplomatic arrangements." Outside the viewing port, the last of the Vorac fleet burned. The void of space erupted in fire and fury as the human fleet opened up with everything they had. Railgun slugs the size of freight trains punched through Vorac bio. Ships like tissue paper, each impact sending shockwaves through the alien formations. Plasma fire from the bulbous Vorac vessels splashed harmlessly against human energy shields, their weapons designed for species that didn't understand layered defense systems. On the bridge of the USN Atlantica, Admiral Jake Morrison watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "All batteries fire at will. Target their command nodes first." The dreadnought's main guns cycled with mechanical precision, each shot calibrated to maximum devastation. In the fighter bays, Lieutenant Maria Diaz strapped into her Wasp-class interceptor, her HUD flickering to life. "All right, boys and girls," she said over squadron comms. "Let's show these bugs why they should have stayed in their own damn system." Her wingman, Ensign Park, chuckled as he ran final checks. "Think they'll surrender when they realize how screwed they are." Diaz grinned. "Nah, but watching them try will be fun." The swarm launched, hundreds of human fighters screaming into the fray. They moved unlike anything the Vorac had encountered before. Not the graceful arcs of the Zapirians, nor the brute force charges of the Krell. Human pilots flew with chaotic precision, their maneuvers seemingly random until they converged on a target with terrifying coordination. "Break left, Park." Diaz yanked her stick hard, spinning her fighter between two converging streams of bio. Plasma, her targeting computer, locked onto a Vorac carrier. Fox 3. The missile streaked away, detonating against the organic ship's pulsating hull. The explosion rippled outward, secondary detonations tearing the vessel apart from within. On the Vorac flagship, the Overmind pulsed with rage and confusion. Its tendrils thrashed against control nodes as it tried to comprehend the disaster unfolding. Impossible. It broadcast across the fleet. These are not the signals we detected. These are not primitive weapons. A human marine boarding party breached the ZSS Whisper's command deck, their armor sealed against the alien atmosphere. Captain Blake's HUD translated the Zapirian's frantic clicks. "They're begging for mercy," his AI reported. Blake didn't lower his rifle. "Tell them, they'll get it when they tell us everything about the Vorac command structure." Back in the main battle, the USN Defiance carved through 3 Vorac cruisers with a single broadside. Commander Lisa Hayes monitored the energy readings. "Their bio-armor can't handle sustained kinetics," she reported to Morrison. "They evolved fighting energy weapons. Our railguns are tearing them apart." The Overmind watched in horror as its fleet disintegrated. It had consumed 100 worlds, absorbed 1,000 species. None had fought like this. None had hidden their true nature so completely. A new signal cut through the chaos. Human vessels activating some new weapon system. "All ships deploy singularity mines," Morrison ordered. Dozens of small devices ejected from human carriers, their gravity fields activating in sequence. Vorac ships found themselves caught in invisible whirlpools of space-time, their organic structures unable to compensate. Hulls compressed. Command nodes imploded. Diaz whooped as she watched an entire Vorac battle group collapse into a miniature black hole. Damn, Command wasn't kidding about the new toys. She banked hard, avoiding debris from another exploding bioship. "Park, you seeing this?" Her wingman didn't respond. "Park, Park." Diaz's blood ran cold as she saw his fighter tumbling, a chunk of Vorac bio matter speared through its engine. "Hold on, I'm coming." She angled for rescue, but the debris field was too dense. Then a miracle, Park's ejection pod flared to life, his fighter's AI having waited for the perfect moment. "Still here," he gasped over comms. "Just really hate flying coach." Diaz laughed in relief as she locked onto his beacon. The battle turned into a rout. Human destroyers executed flawless flanking maneuvers, their point defense systems swatting down every Vorac counterattack. The Atlantica's main guns found the Overmind's flagship, its massive railguns reducing the organic monstrosity to expanding plasma. As the last Vorac ships attempted to flee, they found human stealth drones waiting at every jump point. "No quarter," Morrison ordered. "They came to harvest our world. Show them the consequences." The final Vorac cruiser, its hull bleeding green ichor, made a desperate jump to warp. It barely made it halfway before its own damaged drive tore it apart. The explosion briefly outshining Pluto's pale glow. Silence fell over the Sol system. Then the comm channels erupted as every human ship, every station, every colony cheered as one. Diaz brought her fighter in for landing, her hands shaking from adrenaline. On the Defiance's bridge, Blake watched the Zapirian scouts through the interrogation room glass. Their bioluminescence had faded to a dull gray, the color of absolute shock. Morrison opened a channel to all human forces. "This is Admiral Morrison to all units. The Vorac Swarm is no more. Secure the battlefield and prepare recovery operations." He paused, allowing himself one small smile. "And someone get me a damn coffee." Across the fleet, laughter mixed with the sounds of damage control teams at work. Earth's defenses had been tested for the first time in generations. They had held more than held. They had annihilated one of the galaxy's most feared threats in under an hour. In the ruins of the Vorac flagship, the last fading pulses of the Overmind's consciousness struggled to comprehend what had happened. As its neural networks failed, its final thought echoed into the void. They were waiting for us. They wanted us to come on the observation deck of the Atlantica. Morrison watched the last fires burn out in the distance. Hayes joined him, handing over the promised coffee. "Think anyone else will be stupid enough to try?" she asked. Morrison took a long sip. "Oh, I hope so." The last Vorac bioship tumbled through Earth's atmosphere, its organic hull burning away in streaks of green fire. Across the solar system, the remnants of the Swarm Fleet drifted as lifeless debris, their once terrifying forms now just more junk in the graveyard of space. On the bridge of the USN Defiance, Admiral Jake Morrison watched the final ship burn up on the main display. His hands, still clenched from the battle, slowly relaxed. Around him, the crew exchanged exhausted smiles and quiet words of relief. "All enemy contacts neutralized," reported Lieutenant Chen, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "Sol system is secure." Morrison nodded. "Open a fleet-wide channel." Across thousands of ships from the massive Atlantica to the smallest stealth drones, every human crew member heard the click of the Admiral activating his comm. "To every man and woman who stood today," Morrison began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of hidden preparation, "you've just rewritten history. They came thinking we were weak. They left knowing the truth." He paused, letting the moment settle. "But this isn't just about today. What happens next matters more." "Comms. Patch me through to the Zapirian vessel." On the screen, the image shifted to show the small scout ship they'd spared, its remaining 2 crew members visibly shaken in their cockpit. Vrix's bioluminescent veins pulsed erratically, a Zapirian sign of distress. "You're going home," Morrison told them. "But first, you'll deliver a message." Scout Krell's mandibles trembled as he responded. "What message?" Lisa Hayes stepped forward on the bridge, holding up a datapad. "Everything," she said. "The battle recordings, our ship specifications, the locations of our hidden shipyards." She smiled, a human expression that made the aliens flinch. "We want you to share it all." Vrix's clicking speech came fast and nervous. "You would reveal your strength, your secrets?" Morrison crossed his arms. "We're done hiding. Let every species in the Galactic Federation see what happens when someone threatens Earth. Let them know we watched the stars in silence for 100 years and chose today to answer." As the transmission ended, the bridge crew burst into spontaneous applause in engineering compartments and fighter bays across the fleet. Cheers echoed through steel corridors. Meanwhile, aboard a damaged but functional human stealth drone, Captain Ryan Blake watched the Zapirian scout ship jump to warp. His Marine squad stood at ease behind him, their armor still scorched from boarding actions. "Think they'll listen, sir?" asked Corporal Mendez, wiping alien fluid from her visor. Blake chuckled. "They'll listen, or they'll learn the hard way." Back on Earth, in bunkers buried deep beneath mountains and cities, the men and women who had maintained humanity's great deception for generations finally allowed themselves to breathe. Dr. Eleanor Park, head of the False Signal program, removed her headset in the main operations center beneath Geneva. "It worked," whispered her assistant, staring at the wall of screens showing the battle's aftermath. Park nodded slowly. "All those years broadcasting primitive radio signals, making our space programs look clumsy, letting them think we were divided and weak." She stood, her knees protesting after 18 hours at her station. Now the galaxy knows the truth. Above them in lunar orbit, the massive construction yards of the hidden fleet began unveiling themselves fully for the first time. Docks that had built ships in secret for decades opened their bays to space, revealing hundreds more vessels in various stages of completion. On Mars, the subterranean cities built as last resorts powered up their long dormant defense grids. On Titan, the research stations that had pretended to be mere scientific outposts activated their real purpose, early warning and weapons development. Across human space, the mask fell away. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Federation Council convened in emergency session. The Zapirian scouts had done exactly as instructed, their testimony and recordings spread like radiation through the political body. The human ambassador, a woman named Jo, who had spent years being politely ignored in diplomatic circles, now stood at the center of the chamber around her. Representatives from 100 species watched in stunned silence as battle footage played above the central dais. When it ended, The Vespidian delegate was the first to speak. This changes things. Ambassador Joe smiled. Yes, it does. She tapped a control, and the image shifted to show Admiral Morrison aboard the Defiance. Humanity has a simple message for the galaxy. Morrison's face filled the screen. We are not weak, we are patient. The transmission ended. The chamber remained silent. Back in the Sol system, aboard the newly christened US Vindication, a young ensign turned to his captain during the midnight watch. Sir, do you think there will be another war? The captain, an old submariner from the days before the deception, smiled. Maybe, son. But if there is, he gestured to the stars outside the viewport. Now they know exactly what is waiting for them. On Earth, children looked up at the night sky with new wonder. Their parents pointed to moving lights among the stars, not alien ships, but human vessels patrolling openly for the first time. In a small apartment in Tokyo, an old man who had worked in the false signal program as a young engineer poured himself a drink. He raised his glass to the window, to the fleets now visible to the naked eye. Took you long enough, he muttered with a grin, before downing the whiskey in one satisfied gulp. The message had been delivered. The galaxy would not forget. Humanity's long silence was over.